Hello and welcome to another episode of Invalid Entry. My name is James Taylor and today we are doing the 20th day of Advent, 24 Python libraries in 24 days. Today we're looking at something called Pydantic, or I guess pedantic. Why? Good name for a library. Good name for a Python library. And the reason I wanted to do this today was yesterday we looked at a thing called TinyDB, which was about storing document database, i.e. objects, into a database and getting them back in a super lightweight situation. So it wasn't a massive document database like Mongo or that, but this was just saying you could just shove an object in and get back, especially a dictionary, and get back later. Pydantic is a library which is about enforcing types, effectively. People who know me, I think they have the wrong view of my opinion on types. I like types, but I like dynamic typed languages, and especially I have no problem with strictly typed languages like C# and Java. But I find that some of the arguments around why I have to use a strongly typed language to be misleading. However, there are situations where it does benefit you to have strict type enforcement, especially when you're serializing or deserializing data or having user input or similar. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through the example here because I think this is quite a good example that shows off the thing. So I'm just going to move that out of the way. And we're going to crack on with Pydantic, which I have open here on my desktop. Basically, it shouldn't be that. It should be from Pydantic import base model. And then what we're going to do is we're going to define a class, and that class is going to implement or inherit base model. So class user base model. And basically at this point what we're going to do is going to give it an ID, which is going to be an int, a default name. Ooh, doesn't like that. John Doe. We're literally going from the for the example here. Sign up timestamp is optional, so we will need to from typing import list and optional because they will come up. We're actually also going to need date time, so from date time import date. Okay, we're going to need this optional, and it's going to be a date time, and it's going to be none because it's optional, and then we're also going to throw up a friends. My phone is beeping, so throw there, so you don't hear it. That's going to be none. But friends is equal to a list of int. That's going to be capital L for list int, and it's equal to an empty array. I like that. Okay. So what we have here is an object, and when we make these, you can make these by filling out a model or whatever, but you can also have some data from somewhere. So you can imagine this coming from TinyDB, or it could come from somewhere else, another document database. So ID is going to equal to it's going to be 1, 2, 3. Notice I put it as a string there. This is a dictionary, so that's a bit of string as well. Sign up TS is going to be this here. I'm going to just put this in as it is, so I don't get any typos in that. And friends is going to be 1, 2, and then their example here, they have a 3 in quote marks, so I think they're going to show the typecasting working here. So this is some data, and it has some interesting data elements in it, or bad serialization in there, and that's just a dictionary. That's not going to go wrong. So what we're going to do now is go do my user. It's going to be a user object, and it's going to take the data like that, and now I can just do my user dot ID. And you see it's parsed that as an integer. It hasn't put string around it. So if I do type of that, it comes back saying it is an int. It's already cast it correctly by the definition that we put in the class at the top. And what we can now do is we can also do sign up TS. So it's actually a date time. It's converted that into a date time. So if I get the type argument around it, you actually see it's come back as a date time object of the exact time that I put in here. So that's pretty cool, and of course the friends works and all the other bits work. And also because it's got the name in there, I didn't put a name in here, the name will be John Doe on this one. John Doe, there you go. So it's a pretty cool little feature here to be able to deserialize quickly, and also I believe serialize as well, because I can now do my user.dict. which of course TinyDB takes a dictionary's argument, so it then dumps that back, again, throw that out to the other system. One of the things that we want to do with this is also just check if it goes wrong. So if I put here A in there, because that ID has now got a letter in it, but it's supposed to be an int, when we actually run it, we get a validation error. So we can very quickly catch when the data isn't correct without really doing any work at all. I don't have to parse each individual field. We're doing a little bit of work up here to define these things. Name, however, is not defined as a string, so name could be anything, but ID, you definitely want that to be an integer or whatever it's supposed to be. And that really is the power of Pydantic. It's fast. It is extensible. You can do cool stuff with it. It's used by some biggish organisations. Often when I see things are used by organisations, you could be very wary, because like saying, oh, Microsoft are using this. It's like, yeah, but Microsoft is this massive company where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand doing. It could be used by one guy at Microsoft, could be used by lots of people at Microsoft. What's interesting though is when you do have big organisations using it, it generally means that there is support. You've got multiple organisations using it. There are more people out there looking for it, supporting it, doing bug fixes or feature enhancements. If you've got a library which is not supported by a lot of large organisations, then often you find that it's not getting the bug fixes and features. It's done down to volunteer. It's all down to the one individual often. Sometimes that individual moves job or goes on holiday or whatever and doesn't come back to it. I know as someone who maintains a library, how libraries can just stop being a thing one day. You know, people move on to other libraries, which is fine. That's open source. That's software in general, actually. So yeah, this is a very cool little library for type validation for more complex objects coming out of, you know, JSON blobs or things. I would still suggest, of course, that this data would be better if it was imported as a JSON object, be signed, or so you know its integrity. But yeah, it's really nice to see the validation coming on, especially if you've got data which is lasting over a long period of time. So if you come back, if you say you're storing objects, then a year later or 6 months later you change the model, then a year later you might pull in one of those older objects and wonder why you're getting weirdnesses in your data, and this will just fix that and go, yeah, those are supposed to be ints now. It will just catch anything at the import step of your object. It is what it is. It's a library, take it or leave it. But I like this. I do like this because it allows me to parse information to a quality level. So when I'm writing my code after I've loaded it, so when I'm writing my code down here and interacting with those models, I don't have to worry too much about type issues, if I'm quite honest with you. And I think that's where my argument comes down, is you should use good, strong data validation at the import stage, in my opinion, and not to worry about it too much later in the program. That's the zen of Python, okay? I know some people are like, no, you must type everything, and I've got some argument as to why you don't want to, but that's not for this video. But it is what it is. So I would say if you're using document databases, especially if you're putting data into storage like JSON files, have a look at this to just really take your program or your script to the next level, to really allow it to have a bit more control, a bit more consistency, and you'll find that by having a bit more maturity about how you're managing your model data, especially the interaction and storage of those models, you will find you have a better quality application or script, and it will just take your application to the next level. So this is just another one for that. I keep talking all through this series about having a toolbook or an arsenal of libraries or things you can just reach out and grab. So if someone says, I want to do this thing, I've got a file of JSON things here, import them, or they've given you a file of data science, have a look at this to go, yeah, actually I'm just going to run it through this model to see what falls out, which lines, I've got 10,000 lines in here, which ones don't validate. And this is fast. So I wrote 4 lines of code looking at the columns I wanted. I threw the dictionary at the thing with the double star. Double star basically is the equivalent there of actually saying ID equals 1, 2, 3, like this, and then doing sign up TS equals that date time. It's basically a trick to saying use these as the arguments in, if you haven't seen that before. But so instead of having to rip them all out at ID, because ID you can just throw it as a dictionary as the arguments, and that. And of course it's going to error because I've got my A in there. So yeah, give it a go. And if you're enjoying this series, please hit like, please hit subscribe, because there's still 4 more to go after today. I'm really opening my... This library was actually suggested to me by someone on Reddit, who was like, if you like these things, if you like Django models, have a look at this, because it's really allowing you to use models outside of a database. So this could apply to anything where data's coming in from a web form, from an API call, where you're not necessarily going to put in a database. You may be using a stateless machine. You may be building something which is just lightweight. You just want to manipulate a file, but you want to validate data before you operate on it. So it's a really cool little library. And if you're enjoying these, have a check out of some of the other libraries that we've got in that are appearing over there about now, or a few seconds ago. And I will see you all in another episode. Thank you very much.